Hi, my name is Pamela Fuselli, and I'm the host of Popping the Bubble Wrap. Are you the person in your family who worries about the safety of others, about buying safety products and using them? Are you yelling, "Yes, that's me"? Then this is the podcast for you. Raising a child or children can be a hair-raising undertaking, and keeping them safe is your priority. Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast explores what you really need to think about and provides easy tips on prevention strategies. No bubble wrap here, though. Let's not kid ourselves. Parenting is exhausting. You need to find your moments of peace and quiet where you can get them. Usually that's when your child or children are sleeping. But for this time to actually be peaceful, we need to know our kids are going to be safe while they're snoozing. Today, we're going to talk about what types of products are out there that can keep our kids safe during sleep and what might be more risky than beneficial. Today, I have parents Erica Stone and Scott Beaudin joining me, as well as our expert, Dr. Daniel Rosenfield, Pediatric Emergency Physician in Toronto and specialist in child injury prevention. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Erica and Scott, first, tell me about your downtime if you get any. Do you find that time that your kids are asleep is a time for you to relax or at least do something for yourself? Erica, maybe I'll start with you.
There is not a lot of downtime with a small baby, that's for sure. My little one is 3 months, and sleep when the baby sleeps is a real piece of advice that everyone hates, but it's the only thing you can do. So definitely tiring, but I get it in when I can.
You get it in when you can. What about you, Scott? Is that the same for you? Get your sleep while they're sleeping?
Absolutely. And that ends up being very little sleep. I used to read about 30 books a year before I had a kid. And now my child just turned 2, and I think I've read 3 books in 2 years. So downtime has become very much sort of a dissociative part of my life as opposed to any sort of creative engagement. But that's okay. We'll get it back one day.
One day. There are so many products out there that are marketed to parents like you for sleep, for sleeping safety or just the sleep environment. There's playpens and bumper pads, cribs, bunk beds when they get old enough. Erica, what kinds of products do you have in your home that help keep sleep time safe for Chloe? What did you buy? I mean, I know she's quite young, but did you buy a bassinet? Do you have a crib? What do you have around the house for her to sleep in?
I think I have all of the above. I have a crib in her room, which she's not in yet. So it is kind of just this perfect little nursery that is fairly unused for sleep. But and then we have a bassinet as well in my bedroom. And we also use pack and plays. So I also have a pack and play on each floor of our house so that there is a safe sleeping space in all. I have a dog, so that's a factor for me as well. But each floor actually has, sounds very luxurious, but it's mostly so that I don't have to take the stairs. It's a lazy factor more than anything. So those are my things, and monitors as well. I have a video monitor and I have an audio one as well that I use when she's in one of the other locations. Of course, I don't have a video at each location, so I have just a temporary audio one so I can hear her realistically, but I still use those as well.
Right. So you went with a couple of different options for sleep time. Scott, what's been your experience? What have you used? Is your child in a crib? Did you use a bassinet when they were younger? I know they're 2 now, but
yes, we did use a bassinet when he was younger, and we'll start in a crib, and we'll try and go as long as we can in a crib, and then after a couple of hours, we'll have a discussion about whether we're going to continue that. He'll often win the discussion, and he'll end up in bed with one of us. And we try. Sometimes my partner and I will just need to either sleep on the couch, or when we were in our old place, sleep in a guest room. We don't have that anymore. But we do have this sort of attachment to the bed which sort of makes sort of like a hospital bed guardrail kind of situation where when the child is sleeping next to us, if he were to roll over to the side, that there is something to catch him there if he happened to move without waking us, which doesn't usually happen, but just is a safety precaution. And we have, as Erica said, we have the monitor, we have the Google Nest, and that works well for us for keeping an eye on him. It's such a great feature to be able to just zoom in on the screen, just to do a little zoom in with your fingers, and you can watch them, even the most minute breaths being taken. We're really lucky in this age of parenting to have these tools at our disposal.
And you have a little one on the way, so some of this may change when you have a second baby in the house.
Yes, in terms of who is sleeping where, and I think we'll probably have to say goodbye to the crib, because we've decided that we're not going to let him cry it out, and so that means that mom and dad are sleeping with him for the most part. So once the second baby arrives, we don't have we'll probably have to get him into some sort of toddler bed. And then maybe a question that I would ask is, because we were thinking that I might sleep in a double bed or something beside him, but if he were in that on his own, is that going to be too much space for him?
So a bigger bed, yeah. Well, we'll put that to Dr. Rosenfield in a second. Can you talk to me a little bit about, Erica, about how you made choices about what you bought? Did you talk to friends? Did you get information from your physician, your parents? What did you find it challenging to buy the products that you did?
I found it interesting going and doing the registry at, big box baby store, walking around. And I did find that part a bit overwhelming. You're in a store where you think everything is being, marketed to you and your baby. And I found myself adding some things and then going home and kind of researching and being like, actually, that's not something. I was on the fence about it, but now I know for sure that's something that we shouldn't do. So I found that to be a bit challenging. I know I took a public health course, kind of a, new parent course that was offered by public health in my area. And the nurse running the course was very helpful to say, like, all of these things, like, take them off your registry. Like, do not, don't use any of these things. This is all you need. You really just need, a bassinet. And even then, there's a million different types of bassinets now with the fold down sides and the different sizes. And some of them have, like, even mine has like a mesh side to it, but you can put on like a non-mesh side to it. And it's like, now I can't see my baby at all. So I liked having the mesh so I could at least see the baby from, I lie in my bed and I can see the baby right through the mesh.
Right.
So I found that challenging. Certainly in looking through the cribs, I felt confident about. I think it's the other pieces like the pack and play. Same thing. I was like, what weight limit is the top part of the bassinet level of the pack and play versus the lower level. And the weight limits aren't that easy to find on the instructions. So even now I'm getting to a point where I'm like, is she too big for now this level of the pack and play? So that's one thing that's been challenging as well.
Yeah, there's so many questions. And sometimes you don't know until you go to use the product whether it's going to work for you. Like you said, you replace the mesh with something else, and then it was like, oh, now I can't see. Now I can't see the baby, and I don't like that. So yeah, it's sometimes it's trial and error and experience. And yeah, Scott, Erica just talked about like the number of products or things that you think you have to have when you have a child. How did you and your partner make choices about what you would use? You're obviously, you have a question about beds and, when we're getting to a bit older kids and their sleep. Did you find it challenging to know what to buy and what not to?
It certainly is overwhelming, and you definitely, we were definitely getting drawn into the marketing strategies of feeling like we were bad parents if we didn't have every gizmo and every contraption possible. But we were fortunate that both of our closest friends have families already, so we were able to sort of use them as a guidepost, and very very fortunate to inherit a lot of these items from our friends, and or in a few cases we picked up some new items. But it was we I read a few books that had some very helpful lists of what you need to get started, and and then uh, and then sort of looking at what my friends had,
Mhm.
and going from there.
Dr. Rosenfield, Daniel, can you tell us about some of the sleep products on the market that maybe claim to be safe but are actually more risky, or comment on, what you've heard Scott and Erica talking about? There's so many products out there. Do we really need all of them?
Yes, so they're all great questions. So the first thing, full disclosure, I am also a pretty new-ish parent myself. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, so I'm not particularly far removed from all of these pressures, and I know firsthand that sleep for both parent and baby is the only thing on your mind when you're not getting any. So I can absolutely empathize to the new parents out there, or not even that new, who aren't getting very much sleep. It's absolutely essential for your own personal care, babies, and the whole family unit. So all of this rings very kind of close to me and my family's lived experience. So the the first thoughts I would say are, I feel bad for all of us. The marketing machines from all of these respective companies are brilliant. They know how to pull at the heartstrings. The psychology is very strong. They know how to sell their products. The first thing I'll tell everyone is that almost none of these have actually good research data supporting their use. And when I say products, I mean like literally everything. Anything from, this vibration will make them fall asleep faster, or this sound machine is soothing to their ears, or this motion is clinically proven. None of this is clinically proven. And the way you know that is ask them to show you the clinically peer-reviewed journal article, and they don't exist. So I always tell parents, it's an impossible job. You're doing what you think is best for your child, which is always what I see number one in the emergency department is, well, I want what's best for my child, of course. And so, of course, when you're sleep deprived and you're disinhibited, and it's so easy to buy things nowadays online, you're going to do that if you think there's even a 1% chance of improving your sleep. So I always try and say, be generous with yourself. Most of these products aren't necessarily actively dangerous, but most of the claims verified or validated in any sense of the word. Some of the products I kind of roll my eyes at and think this could be dangerous. The things that jump to the top of mind in that space are weighted blankets for babies. I wasn't aware of these when my kids were like in the newborn period, but a few of my friends, because of the work I do, have forwarded me links on Instagram or other social media sites to these types of products. And to me, these are just terrible ideas. Weighted blankets for adults, even those, again, how good the data is that they support sleeping, I'm not so sure. But we know that restricting a baby from in any way, shape, or form by putting any weight on their chest wall is a very bad idea and can potentially contribute to bad outcomes. So that would be one of the ones that I've seen that I just absolutely stay away from. No matter how desperate you are for sleep, there are lots of other things you can try before you land on putting a weight on that infant. There's so many products that come and go these days. I don't really have a great amount of other examples. If Scott or Erica or even yourself, Pam, have seen other things, I'm happy to weigh in my 2 cents. But that was the one that really jumped out at me as a solution without a problem. The idea of just, well, let's keep making this weighted blanket smaller and smaller and smaller until it's the smallest of people, makes no sense to me, and I don't think should be around.
The one thing that we often get when we tell people not to use bumper pads or pillows in the cribs, the way that they hit their head on the crib is not going to hurt them. But babies who can't roll and things like that have the potential to suffocate against a bumper pad, those types of things, I think.
Yep.
And I think the back to sleep. So making sure that, they're sleeping on their back. And those are some things that might be very different from, say, when, Erica and Scott, your parents or even grandparents, were raising their kids. And those do have good research behind them in terms of, whether they are or aren't safe.
That's a great point. There, I don't want to say there's no data to support some safe sleep practices. The ones you really highlighted in the last 10, 20, 30, even 40 years of research that are shown unequivocally to decrease the rate of sudden infant death syndrome or sudden unexplained infant death are going to be back to sleep. Non-smoking environments, so if you are a smoker, it doesn't matter, even if you only smoke outside, any substance used by the parent, any thick padding, blankets, pillows, loose fitting bedding. And I'll say in the era of Instagram where people are showing off the nursery, it's always full of pillows in the crib. And I'm like, that's fine for the photo. Those all have to be gone by the time the child's going to bed. There's actually some emerging data talking about pacifier use as a protective factor. So, it's not that every baby needs to have a pacifier. Some people don't like that idea. That's okay. But there is data that says a pacifier, once breastfeeding is established, can be helpful and reduce rates of that. And nursing period. Human milk has been shown to be a protective factor for that as well. So those are ones where there's lots of unequivocal, good peer-reviewed research to say this will decrease rates of SIDS and things in that space. So that was a good point. So
yeah, no, thanks for that. We're going to take a quick break and be back in a moment. Nearly 3 decades ago, Amazon set out to be Earth's most consumer-centric company, where people can discover and purchase the widest possible selection of safe and authentic goods. As part of that mission, they obsess over earning and maintaining trust by ensuring that they provide a trustworthy shopping experience. Amazon is dedicated to helping you make informed choices and use your purchases safely. Visit www.amazon.ca/product safety and usage and explore expert safety tips, articles, and videos from our partners to ensure a secure shopping experience. Scott and Erica, before the break, Daniel was telling us about, some of the things that were, proven to be safe and others that don't really work or don't actually have good evidence around. Do any of the things that he talked about surprised you? Erica, maybe I'll start with you.
I'm not surprised that there's anything out there that's being marketed to parents to sleep more. Like, I know that sound machines are a very common one. I think finding that data and discerning between whether or not it is, something that's safe versus what is marketing data is really difficult for a parent. So that part doesn't surprise me too much. I did sort of have a question about swaddling. Swaddles is one too, that there's a lot of different versions of swaddles being marketed out there. The ones where their arms are kind of pinned, like a little, there's like a swaddle. It's like a little Houdini. It's a name of what it sounds like, Houdini. And I think it's because it's so challenging to get out of, which is a bit concerning. So swaddles, I think, is another topic that I find kind of gray. When I took the course, the nurses said we swaddle now with the arms out so that they can, show hunger cues and all that. So we never swaddled our arms for our baby. But in the hospital, they did swaddle our baby with the arms. So then that was a bit confusing. And my baby rolled on her side quite a lot in the first week and 2 weeks. And I was shocked. I was horrified. I was like, oh my gosh, she's already on her side. Like, that's terrifying. And then I was like, maybe we shouldn't swaddle her at all. So I was in sleep sacks very young. So that was another piece as well, where I was like, can I be in a sleep sack this young and safely? So I know it's a question and all sorts of things, but I think swaddles is a huge topic in sleep. And especially with new ones coming out on the market.
Yeah, maybe Daniel, do you want to answer that question or comment?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's a great question. And if that one's one of I'll say evolving thought. So the first thing, in the hospital context, typically they'll swaddle because the babies are typically, especially if they're in the NICU, I'm not speaking to your baby specifically, but they're monitored. So it's very different from that context. Yeah. And a lot
so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that makes sense. They're on oxygen monitoring. So that's much safer in hospital settings. And we could talk afterwards about the marketing devices for home, which we do not recommend for oxygen saturation monitoring for a variety of reasons. So the answer about the sleep sacks is that they're actually they're not explicitly recommended, but they're a good option if you're looking to keep your child, comfortable, warm, and have a blanket without having a blanket. Especially the ones, and most of them are with arms out. They either have sleeves or are sleeveless. But the thinking over the past decade or so is to move towards away from swaddling like the baby burritos that you see in the hospital, and towards letting babies have their arms free. And just because of exactly the way your baby was described, Eric, they roll pretty early. And certainly if you roll and can't move your arms and can't move back to where you started, that is a potential suffocation risk, in addition to the swaddles becoming looser and then becoming just a loose blanket. I think one thing about, childhood development, especially for those who have really young ones and are just learning, and as you are, Erica, because your baby said it's 3 months, every day at that age is a different skill, and they don't run by a specific clock. Every baby is going to be doing different things at different times. And so if you assume, they don't roll till 3 months, and you put them in, the Houdini straitjacket, and they roll at 2 months because that's what your baby does, that's going to be a problem. So I'm a general fan of explaining that we don't know which baby is going to do what at what point, and so we should just have generically safe principles for all of them. So with that in mind, unweighted, regular sleep sacks, more than acceptable. Not to do swaddling. The other thing that we used to do, and again, you probably see in the NICU, is hats. We don't recommend hats anymore. Again, one of the factors that weighs into in the research in sudden infant death is the baby overheating. And so putting a hat on a baby who's already in a warm room, who's already bundled, or wearing a sleep sack is unnecessary. So that's just one of the things I've seen a lot of, and that there's some new literature and new recommendations advising against it. So that's it's always worth bringing up.
Thanks, Daniel. Scott, did anything that we've talked about so far, did anything surprise you, or do you have any questions that have come up with the things you listen to?
I guess now that my child is turning 2, is when could you, he still sleeps in a crib, when can you start introducing pillows into their sleep? When he sleeps in our bed, he seems to be craving crawling up, putting his head beside mine, but I don't know if that is because he wants to be just close to me, or if that's because Dad has a good pillow that he.
Of course, it's because Dad is a great cuddler and has nothing to do with your pillow. The short answer to that is, at age 2, presuming he's developmentally normal, because obviously if he's 2-year-old, if we're talking about other generic children who are maybe developmentally delayed or don't have the typical physical abilities of a 2-year-old. It's a very different discussion than we're talking 2 months. So 2 years, I presume the child is walking. I presume they're able to, tell you when something's wrong. They're rolling around in the bed. They're probably kicking you. So they can use blankets. They can use pillows kind of regularly. A lot of them won't know what to do with them at that age. They'll just be, you'll put them in there confused, but others will like it. So to me, it's more of a trial and error. See what gets the 2-year-old, what do they like? I know you asked at the very beginning about bed size. Honestly, this is kind of, I won't say it's common sense. It's whatever they prefer. I'll tell you, most children, a giant bed, they might feel very foreign in. Most beds at that age are small because they're small people. But there's nothing inherently wrong with it. What I will say, the only thing I'll say from my emergency work is think about the height of the bed, guardrails on the bed. There's often these transition beds that have built-in little guardrails because they're just learning to be in a bed by themselves, and they were used to a crib where they rolled into it and rolled into a wall. We see lots of kids who kind of fall out of the bed. And if they're falling out of a low bed onto carpet, you never make it to the emergency room. But if the bed's 3.5 feet tall with a padded mattress onto hardwood or tile, you often end up in my emergency department. So that's, to me, the more common sense approach to bedding as children get older.
That's a really good point. And I think this conversation has really shown that, sleep or not is not an easy question. And there's so much to think about, but there's also a lot of things that you might think you need that you don't need, and to seek out some credible sources, like parachute.ca. We have lots of information there. Health Canada has good information on products that have been regulated, and places like the Canadian Paediatric Society has really good information. So going to those credible sources is really important. So Scott, Erica, Daniel, I really appreciate the time you've taken to come on this podcast, talking about your experience and challenges with sleep, not only safe sleep, but just sleep in its true form. And to end the podcast, I just want to wish you and your child more sleep time. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Pam.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Popping the Bubble Wrap is a podcast of Parachute, Canada's national injury prevention charity. We release episodes monthly. Visit us at parachute.ca and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Parachute Canada. Don't keep us a secret, though. Help other parents find this podcast by sharing the link to Popping the Bubble Wrap and taking a second to submit a review. It really does help. Popping the Bubble Wrap is produced by Story Studio Network.